The plan has pretty much gone in the trash.
We're 6 jerks in a Jeep, 6 creeps in a Jeep that leaps.
All right.
Here we come, beep, beep.
If you've been following the CJ2A build at all, you know that our plan has been to do, well, you know that we bought what was a mostly complete, or so we thought, CJ2A. And our plan had been to do the minimum amount of work necessary to get it up and running and driving and start to have some fun with it, with a bigger plan for more radical changes and work in the future. Well, as we've continued trying to do that, we're in a place where the plan has pretty much gone in the trash. What we're finding is, as we tear into things like the disc brake conversion, getting the brake system put together, getting the engine up and running, getting seats installed, is that we're in a place where we're having to either do the work that we are planning to do eventually now, or we have to set ourselves up to redo work that we've already done. With that in mind, we've come to a conclusion that it makes more sense for us to just do the eventual build and delay having the running and driving vehicle until we're actually done with what we want to do. Where that takes us is there's a lot of really good parts on this Jeep that we want to use, need to use, but there's also a lot of parts that we're not going to use. And so that puts us to a place of, instead of trying to build this Jeep to a running state more or less as is, this is going to become a donor along with the other 4 Jeeps we've got on the property as we attempt to put together one Jeep that is the final. So today, instead of being build this Jeep, becomes tear down of the parts we want to use against another body and another frame, and realistically probably a different set of axles for the final running and driving. So here we go. So part of what's happening here is we were just at BC Vintage Jeeps last weekend. We brought back another tub with a frame underneath it and a pair of axles. That tub is going to be the basis for our forward build. I think we're going to use that frame because it's in a lot better shape than the frame under this Jeep. So thanks again, Bob. But that's going to be our platform to build out. Step 1, we got to unload everything. So while we're not going to be using this fiberglass tub, this will go up for sale eventually. But we're going to stick with the theme. The final Jeep will be yellow and blue. This has an electric fuel pump, so let the fuel pump pump the fuel out of the tank. And just like that, we have fuel transfer. So I'll let that run for a little bit while we go get the other Jeep ready to receive parts. Can you steer? 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 Let me come back there with you. 1, 2, 3. Good. And now we've got this Jeep where we can just put the parts from the other Jeep onto it as they come off, not lose fasteners, not lose brackets. We'll just transfer everything over each piece as we take it off. And the pump says we're done.
One extra bracket.
Yep.
Okay, fortunately all the hardware's inside.
Yep, well, except for the 2 bolts you just took off. Remember to get both bolts started before you tighten the first one down. Okay. Yeah.
So it's secured. Oh, this one. Turn signal interferes. Shouldn't be right.
It's locked. It's not going anywhere, so it's solid. Okay.
Off camera. All right, what's next, Ken?
It already looks more like a Jeep.
Yeah, it does.
Cup holder goes. Feels like it's just sheet metal screws, so grab a flat blade, take that off. Passenger fender, please.
That's this one. No, this is driver. I know, not the best shape. A big old rust hole there. See that?
Yep, will be some body work.
Yep.
When you're dealing with 80-year-old steel, that's kind of to be expected. Now repeat for the driver's side. It is important to organize your spare hardware in your shop so you can find it without bashing your head on the wall.
I see no captive bolt plate on this side.
The top one is missing, the bottom 2 are here. So we're going to start with the bottom 2 and then we'll have to... Well, just doing some cleanup. We're not going to reuse any of the factory wiring because there's nothing factory about the powertrain or the engine or the electrics that'll come in, and we've got a painless harness that we will use instead. So just clean this up while we've got easy access to it. So we'll remove as much of this as intact as we can, but this Jeep had an engine swap previously. So most of this is not original and has been spliced and hacked already. So there's not a lot here of any real value for preservation.
That's ugly.
It's just a lot of mess. So we'll take it out in as few pieces as possible, but
Look at that little bit of insanity.
probably not not a lot here to preserve.
Well, another reason for stripping this is the foam here. We're just going to go ahead and blast it off when we blast the rest of it. And this has got to go for blasting anyway, so taking all the bits and pieces off.
So just removing extra doodads. This is put in with what appears to be a sheet metal screw that has a 10mm head on it. Won't reuse it because we'll do a new starter solenoid with whatever engine we finally put in this. Certainly that V6 has starter solenoid on the starter rather than remote. Old school solenoid, in, out, and then the control wires. This could also be used as a heavy duty relay. I might test it, see if it's still any good. Keep it around for something else in the future if we need it. Guessing that was a hot wire for something. That'll pull back through the firewall to the other side. No, that is, well, after we dismount it, we'll figure out what it is. I think this chunk of wire is done. It's all chewed up here, corrosion, it's bare here. It is a heavy gauge wire, whatever it was, but I think it's going to be easiest to... I'm just trying to see if there's anything here worth saving. I got to admit, duct tape on electrical is never a good sign. And these splices are just ugly. I mean, they probably worked at the time. But this is not something I would want to see on my vehicle. That is a big blob of solder.
Wow, that is huge. Holy cow.
So, yeah, is there anything there to save? That's a splice. And I'm going to cut the 3 strands of wire that are actually holding that together. So this here, group of 4, looks like what you would find at a Home Depot in the trailer wiring section, or your local AutoZone or whatever. But yeah, this actually looks like just trailer wiring.
Oh, it does. And I see where it goes down.
And underneath.
I tried to get these. Kenneth is better at this than I am. I mean, Kenneth, I'm kind of tempted to stick with the one taillight that these things originally had. I just don't know if it's safe in today's modern age.
I wouldn't, in today's age, I would do a conventional, at least left and right, so you've got turn signals.
Yeah, I can see that. But they will be LEDs.
Try not to destroy something that doesn't have to be destroyed.
Okay, that's a much smoother hold than the one below it. Let me show you what I mean. All right, so notice, nice and smooth. There's teeth on this one. It's going to make patching it just all kinds of fun.
The important piece is the front hold downs. And these are located, we could actually do some measuring to make sure that this is in the same location as it is on the other, but they're probably in the same place. That's the important one. And then inside the hood is these 5
On the piano hinge.
on what looks like a lot like a piano hinge that actually attaches the hood to the body. Now, in this instance, I think the hood's going to go back further than it normally would. However, we can already see these look like they're studs put into the fiberglass. And on the other one, we have what appears to be a set of captive bolts. So we may need to find some hardware to be able to attach. Quarter 20 feels like a winner. These are way, way, way too long for this application, but so it works well is to use these as a thread chase to clean out the threads. And since there doesn't appear to be anything behind these, the fact that they are too long is not going to be a problem to use them as a temporary. I have to have April help stabilize the hood while we take these next 3 bolts out. So April, give me a hand. Yep, that sucks. Okay. All right, well, when disassembly fails, you resort to other means. And with a little luck, grab it and give it a little bit of a yank. There we go. Okay. Now, on your side are all the bolts. Okay. You're going to have to kind of lift it a little bit. Okay, hold on to it for a minute. I should have grabbed washers. All right, and at that point, it should start looking a whole lot more like a Jeep. All right, coming back from lunch, we've finished up most of the cleanup of the old wiring and whatnot here in this Jeep. I think this location was normally the parking brake, but I think this has been repurposed, I suspect, as the control for the blower mower. There's a similar connector on the other side that was probably the headlight switch. Those we might reuse. The dimmer switch is still down there on the floorboards. If it works, we might reuse that. So kind of leave that stuff where it is. Now back to pulling parts off the other Jeep that we need to transfer over or which will be used for other projects. So we bought some shorter bolts while we were out so we can put these in to hold the hood instead of the 3-inch long overkill. But this will be a better long-term solution. All right, time to move over the next piece. It's going to be the grill here. I'm going to do the same kind of idea though, cleanup of things that we don't need, don't want. We're not going to be using these lights, so clip the wires and pull that back out. Time to move the grill. Clean up the wiring what we can. Avoid destroying OE stuff. But every once in a while you come across something that's a splice, followed by a splice, followed by a splice. And you just have to ask yourself why. Yeah, we scored a good deal on a painless rewiring kit for a Jeep. So that is what we'll use to put the wiring for this back together when we're ready. So interesting enough, that is all that attaches between the radiator and the grill. That one I'm going to need the thinner wall socket.
Second first, same as first. Repeat on the other side.
This is a different size.
Yeah, I'm saying that up here too.
Presumably they're only one size up. Keep an eye on the grill, it may try to run away. What was that, Pop? Yeah. One grill. So this is the point where we start to see both some of the challenges we're going to have with this as well as some of the reasons we're doing it. So this riser is part of the 2A CJ mounting for the grill. That is not present on this other frame that we've got, which we think is probably from an M38. A little bit newer design and had a different newer design and had a different method of mounting the grill. The other thing that you start to see, however, is all of this repair work and questionable welds that have been done on the front of this frame. And so, we've welded in another plate here, and if you look at the other side, and then here on the other side we've got another plate that's been welded in along with this piece of angle, and you can see all of this repair work that was done to this frame. Unfortunately, this frame is like this all the way back with just a lot of repair work. So that's the reason we're choosing not to use this frame, but we will need to do something about not having these little supports for the radiator. Probably try to grill. Probably end up fabricating something to replace them onto the other frame. So going to use some new hardware putting this back together rather than trying to reuse the old. It just makes things go together and come apart much, much easier. Not going stupid tight on these, but tight enough to try to get things where they need to be. Kind of looks like that might have moved it. Again, this is probably a function of it being a 2A tub on an M38 frame, and we'll probably just have to do a little bit of clearancing around that in the future. It starts to look like a Jeep. It's looking like a Jeep again. So get that to where you can actually see it on the camera. You may have to hold it instead of me. And this is why we're always careful about whether or not we want to reuse old hardware. Sometimes it's not worth reusing. Okay, April, can you catch? This is going to come off. And one fender. Strictly speaking, I don't have to take the fenders off this tub for what I'm doing, but they are fiberglass, which makes them a little bit brittle. So I think it's better to take them off where they're not going to be supported. They're less likely to get broken, which in terms of using this for a different project or selling this to somebody who wants to use it for a different project, trying to protect this stuff so that it's in good shape for that future is important. So that's why we're taking the fenders off at this point. Take the frame down, and then we'll lift the drivetrain out over the top of the frame.
I think this conversation all started with, how are we going to replace the clutch?
Well, that's part of this, is the fact that the engine and transmission have to be separated. And again, this is not an original engine to this vehicle, so access to things like bell housing bolts are a little challenging.
Yep.
So
If we're replacing the tub.
if the tub's going to come off anyway, it makes it much easier to deal with the clutch at that point.
And it makes it easier to put a metal tub back on when that time comes.
Or just put the powertrain into a whole different Jeep.
That.
This is something that's going to be important for us to remember, is when we sell the tub, making sure that we include the photo where this cutout was put in place for the next person who's looking at it. It's also important for us to remember that this set of headers required this cutout for the exhaust to run outside the frame. If we reuse this engine, we may want to look for a different set of exhaust manifolds, or we're going to have to replicate this on the original sheet metal. So take the trim out from around the steering wheel.
I just did.
Okay, and then the next step would be the trim around the floor, or take the steering wheel apart. So if you pop the cap on the center of the steering wheel there, in the middle of that should be a giant nut. That's going to require a little bit of thought.
How many of you remember what this thing is here in the footwell? Yeah, if you said dimmer switch, you are 100% correct.
Clutch pedal and brake pedal, they look pretty much the same. So I don't think you have to worry about mixing them up. Plug. Let's do this then. Yep. Persistence pays, and it's not completely destroyed.
Have you ever experienced the feeling of deja vu? It's that moment when you feel like you've lived a particular experience before.
All right, we got the dash all torn down, all of the instruments out, all of the sensors that go in through the firewall to the engine removed, all of the wiring that goes through the firewall removed, got the fuel cell or the fuel tank removed. I think next step will be to pull the body mounts, and then we should be ready to lift the body up off the frame. It's gotten dark, so I think we're done for tonight. We'll pick this up with the next round of daylight, and we have time to work. Thanks much, and thanks for watching. If you like what we do us a favor, like, subscribe, share, and comment. You know the drill. Thank you.